year ago, and it's a piece of loss. So I'm going to preface it by saying there is hope for renewal. I rescued a dog from the Katrina disaster, and he's soulful and smart and fun. And so saying that, I'll say that last year, this was completely devastating. I wrote it on the day I buried my dog. January 31st marks the one-year anniversary of Paco's and my last road trip together. I wrote this piece after I'd buried him. I took him to the ranch where we started together and laid him to rest under a tree. This is my story of loss. I'd wanted to leave a tribute to his life with him, but there was no room in the hole for his life jacket, a mountain bike, a saddle. Paco traveled untold miles with me. We went to Colorado and Idaho and New Mexico. He'd rafted the Rio Grande, the Salmon, and the Arkansas, snapping at the splashes in the rapids the whole time. As we hunted morels in the Seven Devils mountain range, I would hear him barking in the mist. I didn't always know where Paco was, but he always knew where I was. He'd follow my bike anywhere, sometimes so closely that he'd get mud all over his face. While I was guiding horse trips in Idaho, he would lope along until he got tired, and then, much to the tourists' amusement, ride in the saddle with me. My Paco is in countless photos with guests sitting in the saddle on my horse's back. He also made a great lazy shop dog when we worked on bikes and sold river equipment and riggins. There was a long while when home went where Paco and I were. Many times that was in my truck, Ruby. Often we would be driving down the highway with no idea where we would end up. Paco lived with me in tents and travel trailers and many good friends' houses. A lot of people knew Paco who had no idea who I was. As long as he had a pile of my dirty clothes to sleep on, he seemed content that I was there with him even if I had to go out. He'd warned me of bears, killed mice, and one time pulled a rattlesnake out of the bushes with his teeth. He also chewed the seat off my bike, a hole in my couch, had terrible breath, and a propensity for investigating skunks a little too closely. He wasn't always obedient, like the fateful day when Nathan told him to stay home. Paco saw Ruby later and ran after her, trying to cross the Terlingua Creek Bridge, and he got hit. I don't think he ever knew what happened. Thankfully, his death was quick. Nathan brought him home, and I held my dog on our porch and told him over and over what a good boy he was. It was the first time I got to pet him for more than a few minutes because he was always too busy. Nathan wanted me to come and cover him up and come inside from the cold, but I just wasn't ready not to ever see his face again. I loaded his still body onto the front seat next to me, and Ruby and I bore him home. Ruby's power steering was out, and the tires were shot, and the oil needed changing, but you can hardly go to the quick lube with a dead dog in your front seat. I put my hand on his shoulder and talked to him and cried all of the 6 hours to the ranch. I can't tell you how proud I was to be the one with whom Paco spent his life, and proud to be the one to put him to rest. It was an honor to take him there. This time, Paco lay still when I reached the gate of the ranch. He'd always raced Ruby and me to the house before. The jackrabbits were safe and the cattle unharassed this once. He wasn't staring out the window, making sure nothing got me, and I really missed that. No matter how alpha Paco took me to be, he never stopped trying to protect me. He was strong and brave and fearless, and I know that's why his muzzle was so gray. It was dark when I got to the house, so I laid Paco out in the front room and lit some candles for him. His fur was shiny and his neck still looked strong, but I could see my Paco wasn't really there anymore. I still couldn't bear to cover his face. I woke up to sleet and dug a grave for him under 3 oak trees on the east side of the house. Digging a grave is therapeutic, let me tell you. I cursed the hard world while I threw that pick into the rocks in the ground. One of the things that made losing him especially difficult for me is that I have a hard time committing to anything. Those who know me know this to be true. But I had committed to Paco. I stood in the breeder's yard for almost 2 hours trying to decide if I could have another being in my life for years. When I decided yes, I really meant it. Every plan I made from that point forward included Paco. He was my constant. I knew that wherever I was, whatever I was doing, and with whom, Paco would be there too. I fully planned to help him when he was older and ease him into his not-so-active years. He's still in my life, only now he's in the ground under the heaviest rocks I could carry. I miss my friend. I still hear his tags and glimpse him out of the corner of my eye sometimes. I was able to cover Paco's face in his blankets and put him in that hole only because I want to imagine the happy Paco, running next to Ruby and riding shotgun, looking through the windshield towards our next adventure.